Now, to put it simply, Italy is pretty much too big to be bailed out. Joining us right now to talk about this issue, Domenico Lombardi. He represented Italy on the boards of the World Bank and the IMF during the last decade. He's now a senior scholar at the Brookings Institution, and also still with us is Tobias Levkovich. He's the chief U.S. equity strategist at Citigroup. Domenico, let me pose the first question to you. If Italy fails, is it game over when it comes to Europe?
Well, first of all, every attempt should be made to avoid that the situation gets out of hands. The government is passing in these days a further supplementary budget plan, the second in less than 2 months. The first proved to be highly ineffective, was unable to prevent a further wave of speculative attacks that materialized between the end of July and the early part of August, which prompted the government to issue a further supplementary budget plan that is supposed to be approved by the lower chamber of the parliament later this week. This plan, too, will prove to be highly ineffective because it does not tackle the main issues at the heart of the market turmoil as far as Italy is concerned. That is a very low rate of growth, which is really unable to sustain the increasing pile of public debt that this year is topping 120% of GDP, really among the highest in the world after Japan and Greece.
So help me out here. So my question is, if Italy goes down, I mean, does the rest of Europe topple? I mean, despite some of the optimism we're hearing from French banks today, it won't matter at that point. French banks, German banks, nobody will be immune if Italy goes down.
Exactly. We're entering a new stage of the European crisis. A stage which is putting added strain on the large sovereigns like Italy. And, I think we are still going to need more blood on the battlefield until we're going to see really a turning of the event, a shift in the policy stance among the key countries of the euro area, Germany among them. And then, of course, once the prospect of an imminent crisis in Italy becomes a reality, this is, in my view, going to trigger a shift in the attitude of German policymakers, whom at that point will be more inclined to, to pursue a more cooperative stance.
What does that mean? Do you mean backing Eurobonds here? Are you talking about are you talking about the financing issue here, backing Eurobonds, becoming a more federalist system? Because that's what Tremonti has come out in favor of. It seems like that's what Italy wants. They have to deal with their budget issues, but they need cheaper financing, so Eurobonds are the solution, right?
Well, I think the Eurobonds are more an instrument rather than an end in itself. Clearly, there should be a better control of the public finances in Europe, which has been lacking so far. There is also a need for a more timely, predictable crisis framework. Just to give you an example, in late July, the euro area leaders approved, in principle, a further bailout program to Greece. And while this program still needs to be approved by some European legislatures, Germany among them, and of course, all this really, increases uncertainty, increases the scope for turmoil in the market, and at this point, really, we need a comprehensive strategy for tackling the European crisis. The Eurobond could be an instrument in itself, but it's not going to be resolutive, especially in the case of Italy. Italy has a 120% of debt to GDP ratio. The Eurobond would help to cover the first 60%. This means that there would be still a 1 trillion of public debt bonds floating without, a euro area guarantee. So I think it's.
I think these numbers have been talked about a lot already. Are there any particular milestones that we should look for? Is there a date? Is there a conference? Is there something that we should be looking for the next, call it, month or so to give us a little bit more clarity on the direction that it's going to be taken?
I don't think that we should look for a specific date, in the sense that certainly in the next, this Friday there will be a EU finance ministers meeting in Poland, and U.S. Secretary Gassner will be joining that meeting, which is really unprecedented in itself, and it shows really the concern that the Obama administration has in the developments that we are observing in Europe. In a couple of weeks from now, there will be a G20 finance ministers meeting in Washington and the IMF ministerial meetings as well. Certainly that will be a further opportunity to put leverage to persuade the Europeans to move forward. But that said, I really feel that there is not a political leadership in Europe that is willing to move things forward. If anything, right now we will need Germany to pursue a more open, more cooperative stance, and yet what we have seen last week was a ruling by the German Constitutional Court which further put limits on the political ability of the government for...
Domenico, if I may, let me jump in, because you've represented Italy on the boards of the World Bank and the IMF over the last 10 years. I think Tobias brings up a good point. I mean, shouldn't officials in Europe at this point be putting some kind of timeline on the table? We've been talking Greece for over a year and a half. Now we're worried about Italy, and we wonder about what comes next. Don't the officials, you've been on the inside over in Europe, do not the officials understand the importance of laying out a timeline at this point? Because in the meantime, the markets are kind of twisting in the wind.
Unfortunately, the main issue lies from the incomplete architecture of the euro, whereby we have a centralized monetary policy in the euro area, and yet, we have sovereign governments. These sovereign governments, clearly try to maximize their own national welfare, and this is what, in a way, is prompting this the current impasse. The only glue, the only galvanizing actor so far has been the European Central Bank. This is what is keeping right now, the Italian bond markets alive, thanks to its open market purchases program. But of course, the ECB intervention cannot last indefinitely, and at some stage, the European political authorities will need to take responsibilities in their own hands. The Italian, of course, but also Germany.
All right. Hey, Domenico, thanks so much for joining us. Domenico Lombardi, they're now senior scholar at the Brookings Institution. We appreciate it. He was with the World Bank. He was with the IMF, and he's on the inside in that circle.